The Reverend George Penk's joining us on the show today. It's the season of Lent, and he's here to chat with us about how we know we're loved. I like that as a topic. Good afternoon, George.
Hello, Lizzie. Nice to be joining you again.
Yeah. Now this topic came from one of your podcasts, right? Recent podcast.
Yeah, it was last week's episode actually for the 7 minute sermon, which is, it's a sermon in 7 minutes-ish each week. And last week, the title was How We Know We're Loved, which is possibly a good thing to reflect on at any time of the year, but I feel it's particularly appropriate to talk about just a few weeks from Easter as we continue our journey through the season of Lent.
Yeah. So in this context, how do we know we're loved, George?
Well, the basic idea behind it is that our value in God's eyes is not determined by things like our past, our achievements, our failures, or our circumstances. Actually, our value is determined by the love that God has for us. So that's the key idea behind this one, I guess. That's my starting point, that it's God's love that really defines who we actually really are. And how do we know that God loves us? Well, we know it by the events of the first Easter. We know it by these events that we are preparing for during the season of Lent. We know it specifically because Jesus gave up his life for us.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean that's so true. And yet we get hung up, George, on all the things that we think we don't measure up to, our behaviour. We need to remember, don't we, that our God's love towards us and his acceptance is based on who he is and what he's done, right? It's not
Yeah,
based on us, is it?
yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're anything like me, and it sounds like you are, Lizzie, it's very easy to forget that, isn't it? It's easy to be distracted by so many other things. But what I like about Lent is it's sort of like a back to basic season. So it helps us consider these really fundamental things about, well, who God is, what he has done, and who we are in light of that. And this is this specific idea of God's love being revealed by the cross of Christ is a really basic, really fundamental idea in the New Testament. I mean, in the letter to the Romans, Paul says that God demonstrates his love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. In Galatians, he says, the life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. The Apostle John, he talks about the cross in 1 John chapter 3. He says, we know what real love is because Jesus gave up his life for us. So again and again throughout the New Testament, throughout the Christian scriptures, we see this idea that God's love for us is revealed by what Jesus has done for us at the first Easter.
Mm. So, as Christians on this journey of Lent towards Easter, and you're reminding us of God's love for us on the cross, how do we embrace that more in this season? How do we let it permeate our beings? I guess you could say.
Well, perhaps we can approach it in a slightly different way. Rather than us embracing it, let's let it embrace us.
Oh,
So
oh, I
so
like
it's not
that.
about
Once
it's not
again,
about
it's not about us.
yeah, exactly. And I mean that is a real change in sort of headspace and mindset, isn't it? I mean, everything in us, everything in the culture around us these days, I think is sort of screaming at us to say, this is what we do, this is how we are defined by the stuff that we have, by the stuff that we've done, by the stuff that we haven't done, by the people in our lives. And some of that is really good stuff. But it's not where our ultimate identity comes from. I think our identity, the definition of who we are, is fundamentally about who we are in the sight of God, who we are because we're loved by him. And so it just keeps coming back to this idea of God loving us and that love for us being revealed by what Jesus has done for us on the first Easter. So I guess the challenge for myself as I head towards Easter is to try and let that big idea and let that story of Easter actually grab me rather than the other way around.
Yeah, and in that transaction, to me, it says it's something that God's done for us, that He's given to us. He's given His life. He's given us His love. And I guess I am looking for my part in the equation, but I'm feeling and I'm
Mm.
sensing from what you're saying is that our role, that my role, is just to accept that.
Yeah, well, I think this is where faith and trust comes into it, because it's not about ultimately what you or I have done. It's about what God has done for us in the person of Jesus. And if we have that as our sort of perspective as we look at the events of the first Easter, and that there is nothing I can do to earn God's love, but actually it's something I need to receive, then I need to have faith that that's enough, and I need to trust in the finished work of the cross.
It's beautiful. Reverend George Penk, great to catch up with you today. Look forward to catching up with you next time.
Thanks heaps, Lizzie. Talk to you then.